I am Dennis Heisey, El Paso County Commissioner and Chair of the PPACG. And to my left, and as he pointed out, he moved further left, so I moved further left.
Working on it.
Let's bring it back to the center, okay?
That's pretty hard
I'll
to keep
further left.
And I see,
Mark's going to shoot me.
and Daryl moved to the right.
Did you introduce yourself?
Mark Snyder, Mayor of Manitou Springs.
Good morning, Rob McDonald, Director here at Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments.
Daryl Glenn, El Paso County Commissioner.
Keith McCaffrey, Mayor of Town of Rama.
Mark Dwelby, very concerned about the move to the left.
Danny Pico, City Council, Colorado Springs.
Jill Gabler, City Council, Colorado Springs.
Don Knight, City Council, Colorado Springs.
Jim Hall, Public Transportation Representative.
Nikki McDonald, Mayor of Plummer Lake.
Travis Eaton, Mayor of Monument.
David Turley, Mayor of Woodland Park.
Norm Steen, Teller County.
Tyler Stevens, Trustee, Town of Green Mountain Falls, also announcing our CAC representative. And we appointed last night Ray Burgess, who's in the audience. Thank you.
You know, only those of us with a little history here realize that is cause for applause.
Did you use like a shepherd's?
Moving back to Rich Muzzy.
Know the history.
Rich Muzzy, Environmental Program Manager, Pikes Peak Area Council.
Beverly Mayeski, Financial Manager, PPACG.
Dallas Jameson, Policy and Communications Advisor.
Greg Gasper, Transportation Director.
Guy Dutra Silvero, Director of the Area Agency on Aging.
Laura McCaffrey, Citizen of Ramo.
Thank you. Working our way across the audience.
Mike Wickliffe, Monument Sanitation.
Elizabeth Garner, State Demography Office.
You know me, Ray Burgess, Green Mountain Falls.
I'm Hal Moffett, nominee for CAC.
Ray Kruger, Citizens, Colorado Springs.
Dr. Trace Vaughn, former CAC member.
Roger Armstrong, City of Manitou Springs, the CAC.
Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC.
Joel Miller, Colorado Springs City Council. Bill Gamble from the Area Agency on Aging.
Ed Ellis, Senior Services.
Michael Snow, CDOT, Transportation Development.
Maggie Pettit, CDOT Region 2 Planning.
Field Security, Water and Sanitation Districts.
Emily Lindsay, PPACG.
Brian Vituli,
Charles Cochran, Springs Engineering. I'm Schmidt, PPACG CAC representative of Colorado Springs.
Catherine Kreiser, Colorado Springs Traffic Engineer.
She's my
Jason McMurray, Marcel Day, supporting U.S. Air Force Space Command.
Jessica Ebeling, Marshall Day, supporting Air Force Academy.
David Mentor, City of Colorado Springs Transit Services Division, Complimentary Transit. Jim Warner, Jim Reed, Public Services Department, El Paso County. Dave Watt, CDOT. Doug Wallach, CDOT. Mark Andrews, CDOT.
Wow. CDOT took the back row this time.
Not be an issue today.
Closest to the door.
Well, thank you all for attending. Good group out there this morning. Oh, my mayor.
I'm my commissioner.
Jerry Howells, Mayor of Fountain, has joined us. Thank you, Jerry. Item number 2, agenda approval. Yes, Rob.
One addition we would propose to add to item 7B, another information on the federal Tiger 5 grant, I guess it's called. And that's just an update.
Good. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 3 is public comment. For those of you in the audience, this would be your opportunity to bring anything before this board that is not on today's agenda. If you have something you'd like to tell us about. You're all here for an agenda item. Very good. Item number 4, consent items. We have had a request to pull off items C and D. If there is no request to pull off A and B, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Items A and B are approved. Item number C, 4C is the summary of the financial reports. Beverly, is that you? If you'd like to come up to the podium, we'll see what questions we have. Councilmember Knight, did you
Yes.
have a question?
Please, for the new members, can you just give us a quick level, 101 level on what the two sheets are? I realize they're not all financial. If we got land and improvements, depreciation, so.
Right. The first page, attachment 1, is the balance sheet. And this is a typical balance sheet for an entity like ours, which is a small governmental entity. We're classified as governmental. And as you just go through it, the different items, cash in the bank, accounts receivable, and so on, the land and improvements, the building, that's this building. The PPACG owns this building. And it's depreciated. Then in the liabilities section, of course, accounts payable and other liabilities. We don't have any debt on the building or any other kind of debt like that. The Department of Social Services advance is for the Area Agency on Aging in their large grant. They give us money up front because we pay out before we can be reimbursed. So the other items are the typical on a financial statement, or the liabilities are typical on a balance sheet. And then the equity at the bottom.
So liabilities are all cash then, or,
Yes.
okay. All right.
And on attachment 2, the revenue section just goes through, we'll go through it, the federal and state grants that we receive for all the different programs. And then member dues, the annual budget is $410,000, but so far we've used almost $130,000, and that's for matching the grants. And then the PPRTA administrative contract is considered revenue for PPACG, and then it's reflected in the expenditures below. And that's for the 3 FTEs that that do the accounting and the administration of the RTA. Other revenues, just interest and so on. The pass-through revenues are through the Area Agency on Aging, and they're passed through to subcontractor services.
Great.
So then the rest of it's just the typical
Right.
expenditures. And so do you have any questions?
No, that was great. Thank you very much. Appreciate
you.
it.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4D, Security Sanitation District Site Application Lift Station. Rich?
Sure. Are there any specific questions, or should I just provide?
Let's start with questions,
an
and
overview?
then if we
Okay.
need the whole overview, we'll do it.
And I think I read somewhere, and I'm trying to find it again, but did security request some changes to the plan? I think I read where security request changes to the plan, but there was nothing in there whether those changes were made, or am I on the wrong topic?
I think let me go through a quick overview. As the designated water quality management plan agency, PPACG is required to review site applications for El Paso, Taylor,
Right.
and Park counties. As part of that review, we have a site application review committee, which consists of dischargers and people that are familiar with the technical aspects of the site applications. That group met, and we had several questions, and Security Sanitation District responded to kind of all those questions. And then the Water Quality Management Committee reviewed the site application, and there weren't any additional questions at that meeting. So the Water Quality Management Committee did go ahead and recommend to the board to approve that site application. So there were questions at first, but all those questions were resolved before it came to this committee.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5A, under committee reports, we'll start with the Transportation Advisory Committee. Dave Mentor.
Good morning, David Mentor, Transit Planning Supervisor, City of Colorado Springs, TAC Chair. You have the information from the TAC meeting minutes in your packet here, and you have an agenda item coming up later that we talked about extensively coming up on the CDAT ramp application later in your meeting here today. And that information continues to change rapidly and making the TAC meeting a little bit old information at this point, and so you'll get new information here today. One thing we did talk about that is with the Cimarron interchange and the ramp application proposal, the pre-application coming up, it looks like we'd probably need to find about $1 million out of the TIP. We were confident that it could be found. However, it was going to be quite an arduous effort to identify that last little bit of money out of the TIP, and we decided to wait until more information came, probably to discuss that further after June 1st.
One dumb question, what's the tip?
Transportation Improvement Program? Yeah.
Other questions, comments for Mr. Mentor? Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Item B,
Not on the tip.
Community Advisory Committee report and certificates of appreciation. Jim Godfrey.
Just not familiar with the acronym.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Welcome to the new members. I'm Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. We only had one item on our agenda that's up for yours, and it was approval of the Transportation Improvement Program Amendment Number 5, and that was in your meeting. There is one subject that I would like to emphasize to the members of the board this morning. We have got we've got 3 existing vacancies with. Did you appoint someone to the CAC? We only have 2. Thank you. All right. There are successes in life. Yeah. But we have 6 vacancies for members that are approaching their term limit. The term limit for the CAC and by our bylaws are 2 3-year terms by a member government. For those of you who are a member of the PPRTA, you addressed that issue in a recent meeting, and we're going to be addressing that at an upcoming meeting of ours. We've got excellent people, and they really non-parochial and really provide great inputs and representative of the community, and we really appreciate their service. But we've got 1 at-large position, 1 from El Paso County, 3 from the City of Colorado Springs, and 1 from Woodland Park that expire in May. And then in November, we've got another large batch of 6. So my plea to you as member governments, appoint new members to the CAC. We're going to have trouble with a quorum here if we're not careful in the next couple of months.
What about extending the term limits? What about another? I mean, you got all these volunteers. It's not like they're.
I think that's what Jim was saying, that based on action taken by the RTA, they may be coming forward asking for similar relief on term limits.
We are looking at that, and we wanted to put together, we did an informal thing. It wasn't on our agenda. We did an informal discussion at the CAC about that. And I think everyone is in agreement. As long as a member government wants that representation there, then it ought to be their choice, and our term limits are self-imposed, basically, approved and set by you. And so we will probably come forward next month with a recommendation to do away with those term limits.
Limiting the amount someone can volunteer doesn't seem intelligent to me. We're throwing away good people here, and there's no point in that.
Yeah, but are we having a lack of volunteers?
We can change the rules. We make the rules.
I'm sorry, what?
Are we having a lack of volunteers?
The CAC is not aware of the member government's issues. The at-large positions, we've got 3 resumes on file from previous openings that we've interviewed but not selected, so we're in the process of contacting those. We have another person has stepped forward for an at-large position as well. we will look at all of those through our nominating committee and make a recommendation to the board based on that review that we're getting ready to have. But I'm not aware of the internal processes that the member governments have.
And we can have that discussion when you bring your bylaws recommendation forward. And it may depend on which member government is speaking as to whether they have trouble getting volunteers or not.
Okay. With that, and talking about excellent people, we have some certificates that I would like to hand out. And Mr. Chair, would you care to join me? You just want me to do this?
Absolutely.
What if you get an award?
I've been involved with the CAC now almost 6 years, and I've had the pleasure of working with most of these folks. Pardon me turning my back to you folks. And they have been excellent, really provided great input, and I think that is one thing we have at the CAC is we do have a dialogue, we do discuss issues, and by and large, these are just great folks. So is Greg, he wasn't here. Greg Souter is leaving us. He's representing 2 terms with the city of Colorado Springs. Gary Ritchie, Gary make it? Gary couldn't come either. Gary is 2 terms as citizen at large and is representing the city of Woodland Park right now. And he has declined renomination. Mike Schmidt, you are here. Mike is 2 terms with the city of Colorado Springs. Mike, thank you for your service.
Pleasure,
I
sir.
appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Mike has really
Sure.
contributed particularly a lot on the technical side. He's a great IT guy and has provided some really good input. So, Mike, thank you for your
Thank you,
service.
sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Roger Armstrong. Roger has represented the city of Manitou Springs, has done a super job representing them, and has a great comments and inputs. So, Roger, thank you for your service. Appreciate it. Dr. Trajan Bond, 2 terms at citizen at large. Trajan, thank you so much for your input. You've always got some great things to say. Appreciate it.
It's my
And our last one, someone that many of you probably know is Dr. Bob Stein. Bob has been very active in the community for many, many years in lots of different places along the time. And Bob was finishing his term from El Paso County. So that's all I have unless someone has any questions for me.
I would like to make comment, maybe have you make comment, since CDOT is here, and I understand they don't regularly attend your meetings. Item number 3 on public comments. You had someone bring forward the intersection at Ohio Street and Highway 85.
Oh, yes. The representative from Fountain wanted to know what CDOT's plan was for some resurfacing area, street resurfacing and work. When he looks at all the plans that he sees, he doesn't see any resurfacing effort, and was talking particularly about Ohio Street and Highway 85, about how that is deteriorating, and was wondering what the plan was. And he asked CDOT to if they could get him some information on that. So we put them in touch with, he was a council representative for City of Fountain and wanted to know more. So they exchanged information. It really wasn't on our agenda.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't anything we were to discuss.
Well, since I have to be careful to not spill my coffee when I go through that intersection, I was kind of curious about that one myself.
And the gentleman that was here at the CDOT, I don't remember his name, it was at the meeting, got together with him, and they were going to try to get him the information he needed.
Great. Thank you.
And Commissioner Heisey, I'll
Yes.
follow up with Jim, too, to see what transpired.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It really is about more than just my coffee, but
I will tell him about that, though, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Item D, our Regional Advisory Council. Bill Gamble.
Good morning. Since we last reported to this group, we met twice. The first meeting was with our Technical Review Committee, and that group met to address the provider's response to potential budget changes. as a result of budget changes at state level and as well as sequestration. Guy will give you the details on that, but we lost money on one side, gained on another, so we're going to be okay. And Guy will give you the specific details on the figures. The second thing I'd like to remind you of is in May we will have our public meeting in Florissant, at the Florissant Library on 30 May at 10 in the morning. So if you all want to join us, we'll be at Florissant, Talbot County. Again, Guy will give you details on the budget figures.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Gamble? Thank you, sir. Item D, Water Quality Management Committee, Arkansas Fountain Coalition Urban River Evaluation. Mike Wickland, I hope you can, that's got to be a big topic, and we don't have all day, so.
Right, well, yeah, my name is Mike Wickland. I am the manager of Monument Sanitation District. I serve as the chair for the Water Quality Management Committee. I'm on the SARC Committee, Site Application Review Committee, and also the Upper Monument Water Quality Management Committee. And anyway, I think you probably know we have formed this new group, the Arkansas Fountain Coalition of Urban and Rural River Evaluation. It's for monitoring Monument and Fountain Creek down to the Arkansas and part of the Arkansas. This goes back to Regulation 31, a new regulation that the Water Quality Commission put in up in at the State Health Department for regulating phosphorus and nitrogen discharge from wastewater treatment facilities. The PPACG board here has been very supportive of the Water Quality Management Committee's recommendations and in sending things to the State Department of Health to let them know that these things to treat for the phosphorus and nitrogen are quite expensive. We have to, with our existing facilities, and in our case at the Tri-Lakes Wastewater Treatment Facility, we were an EPA award-winning plant 10 years ago. Now, we're being told we've got to invest all this money into removing phosphorus. Our phosphorus levels are about 4 milligrams per liter that we discharge. They want us to treat that down to 1. And that could cost quite a bit of money for, depending on the type of treatment we put in place. It could be chemical treatment, and that's what we're looking at, using ferric chloride or an alum to remove the phosphorus. It's about $200,000 per year just for the chemicals. That doesn't include what it costs to put in the infrastructure, the pumps and everything, plus the operation of those facilities to remove the phosphorus. Our nitrogen levels are quite well. As you know, under Regulation 31, the nitrogen, they allowed 15 milligrams per liter under that regulation, which goes into effect in 2017. We treat down to about 4 or 5 milligrams per liter. So we're in good shape there until 2022 when the other regulations go into, the Reg 31 regulations go into effect. Right now we're under Reg 85. I think I misspoke about that. Anyway, so that's what's been going on with that. This new committee that we have formed, we have about 11 dischargers that have signed up for this. And we are going to be monitoring the stream, taking samples at different locations upstream and downstream of wastewater treatment facilities so that we can give the state a good picture of what's happening in our watershed here, the Fountain Creek watershed and part of the Arkansas. And they will allow us to use that information to get site-specific variances or well, we can't call them variances anymore, but site-specific limits for the dischargers, depending on whether any harm is being done in the stream. So I hope I stated that accurately, Rich. Anyway, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Have you begun the testing, or is that yet
Yes.
to? Okay. How long has that been going on?
Well, since March, I think all of the facilities have been monitoring our particular facility, I think we started monitoring a little bit before that for the phosphorus and nitrogen upstream and downstream.
Thank you. Dr. Knoll?
Is the 11 points all of them? Discharge? Do you have all points with the 11?
Yes, those are point source. And they're not stormwater. They're, well, I don't know if we have one, no, they're not stormwater. I thought there was one stormwater that wanted to get involved, but.
Councilmember Gabler, did I see your hand? No. Yes, Mayor McCafferty.
Have we identified, or do we know the primary source of this phosphorus? Is it fertilizers or soaps, or what are we looking at?
About
What can we do to help there?
About 90 to 95% of the phosphorus and nitrogen in the watersheds throughout the country come from agriculture, which would be livestock, irrigation of crops, that type of thing. MS4s, which are the city stormwater from rains and whatnot. People fertilize their grass. So a very small amount actually comes from the wastewater treatment facilities. The EPA has control over the wastewater treatment facilities through the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System and through obviously the Clean Water Act. But they don't have as much control or possibly any control over the farmers. So that's why they're dealing with us. Because they do have lots of control over us.
Nothing like a point source to be able to try to cure the ills of the world.
So we do know that really we're not the big issue. And now the EPA is trying to work with the farmers to come up with some solutions there. But I hope I answered your question. Yes.
And as long as you brought up the fertilizer, it's a little bit of a soapbox of mine. I used to be in the if a little's good, a lot's better category.
Yeah.
Homeowners tend to over-fertilize their lawns a lot more than a farmer does because they know what they need to apply per acre, and it costs them a lot of
Lots
money.
of money, yeah.
For us, another $10 if we have to buy an extra bag of fertilizer, maybe a little more now. So don't over-fertilize your lawns. You can keep them green without washing the nitrogen and the other fertilizers into the wastewater system. So
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 6, our action items. 6A is Transportation Improvement Program Amendment number 5. Brian Vituli.
Good morning. Thank you. Brian Vituli with PPACG's Transportation Program. We're asking for your approval of Amendment 5 to the 2013-2018 Transportation Improvement Program. CDOT is requesting to add $5.5 million of hazard elimination and safety funds to the Powers Boulevard corridor for the design and construction of acceleration and deceleration lanes along 9 locations on the corridor. There's a map up front, and in Attachment 1, you'll see the details for this project. The locations are Dublin, Stetson Hills, Barnes, North and South Carefree, Constitution, Victor Place, Palmer Park Boulevard, and Galley. And CDOT is requesting to add $700,000 for fiscal year 2013 to finish the design of this, and then the $4.8 million of the balance will be programmed in 2014 for construction. As I said, attachments 1 and 2, you'll see the details for this amendment. Attachment 3 is our tip table as we're proposing for approval. And attachment 4 is a resolution of approval. And for our new board members, I wanted to give you a brief description of what our Transportation Improvement Program is. You'll hear it referred to as the TIP. The TIP is our 6-year implementation plan of our long-range regional transportation plan. So where the long-range plan looks out to 2035, 25 years in the future, our TIP is our 6-year funding and programming plan. So all the projects in our TIP have been selected, submitted to us by our member governments, scored, prioritized, and funded. And they'll be categorized by funding source and by what year they're programmed for funding. So you'll see me at least every month. Are there any questions?
Brian, I have one, and I'm not sure you're the one to answer this, but if not, feel free
Mark
to
Andrew from
deflect
CDOT
it.
is here. Yeah.
Does this money have any ramp possibilities, implications? Do we want to see what happens with ramp before we start committing money?
Sure. Mark Andrews, CDOT. It really isn't tied to any of the ramp projects that we submitted. So it's kind of an independent set of projects, if you will. And it's safety money, and because of the accident history there, we were able to get this funding. So it really isn't tied to that criteria.
But if we were to put this money towards the ramp, would that change anything? Is it even eligible money to put towards the ramp?
I would not think it would be eligible because it doesn't have the 20% match, local match.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Pico.
Just one definitional question here. When you say an acceleration lane, right now those are merge lanes that go for a certain period of time and merge in. By acceleration lane, you just mean extending that up to the next intersection?
Yes, they're merge lanes onto the corridor. I think in some cases, Mark, they may be lengthening the acceleration lane.
Well, that's kind of my confusion because I hit most of those streets now. There are merge lanes, so I'm just kind of wondering what the specific difference is.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll extend those auxiliary lanes to standard length. In some cases, they're 200 feet. We'll be extending those possibly up to 1,000 to 1,500 feet. And then when they do merge together, we'll have one continuous auxiliary lane.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Mayor McCafferty.
So basically, this is just still part of the transition of moving powers to a state highway, to bring it up to state highway standards, correct?
Well, it is a state highway, so it is a project that we see that is necessary to bring it up to standard in terms of auxiliary lanes.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Anything else? Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item B, Arkansas River Basin hearing. Rich Muzzy.
Well, Mike did a good job of setting this presentation up. Every 5 years, although it's still referred to as a tri-annual review, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment reviews the water quality standards and classifications for the Arkansas River Basin, which, as most of you know, includes the Fountain Creek watershed. Classifications refers to the intended beneficial uses, such as water supply, agricultural, the type of recreation, the type of aquatic habitat found in those stream segments. Segments may constitute a specific stretch of river, may be referred to a lake or reservoir, a tributary to main stems such as Fountain Creek or Monument Creek, or a group of tributaries or lakes and reservoirs. Within the Fountain Creek watershed, there are over 10 specific segments. Just to give you an idea of what a segment is, Segment 1A, Fountain Creek Segment 1A refers to everything from the confluence of Monument Creek and Fountain Creek all the way up to where Fountain Creek starts. Fountain Creek Segment 2A refers to the confluence of Fountain Creek and Monument Creek all the way down to the Highway 47 bridge in Pueblo. Those are just two examples to give you an idea of kind of what a stream reach looks like. Each one of those stream reaches has specific standards and classifications in place. The Arkansas River Basin hearing is in June. Prior to the hearing, there are several steps that need to take place, and those were listed in the background section of the memo that was included in your packet. To comment on the proposals that are made by the division and others, you have to go ahead and apply what's referred to as party status, and that allows you to go ahead and make comments on the proposals. And as the lead water quality management planning agency for El Paso County and Teller County's PPACG applied for party status along with AFCURE. As Mike mentioned, AFCURE stands for Arkansas Fountain Coalition of Urban River Evaluation. Long acronym. And consists of 11 entities. All 11 entities are point source dischargers. 9 of those entities are within El Paso County and represent pretty much every single point source discharger in El Paso County. And in addition to that, AFCURE consists of the city of Pueblo and Pueblo West Metropolitan District. So the 2 largest dischargers within Pueblo County. In fact, the only 2 major dischargers within Pueblo County. The idea behind the development of AFCURE, which PPACG kind of spearheaded this effort in 2012, was to go ahead and, as Mike mentioned, to look at what needs to be done to comply with Reg 85, the nutrient monitoring requirements that were put in place in 2012. There's specific sampling that needs to be done, and if possible, to kind of share those sampling points between entities, share the research that needs to be done, collect more data to go ahead and develop, as Mike mentioned, site-specific standards to determine the specific standards that are appropriate for our streams and creeks. So there's power in numbers, as they say. So the idea being that we can save all the entities money and also kind of look at regional issues and concerns. AFCURE developed a responsive pre-hearing statement, and it's broken down into both general comments and specific comments. The segment-specific comments correspond to the individual reaches, and I kind of briefly mentioned what a reach was. And a lot of these comments go into more detail by other parties. Of the 11 entities that are listed in your memo, almost all these entities also applied for party status. So just to give you an example, on page 7 of the AFCURE responsive pre-hearing statement, if you look on the middle there of the page, right before Fountain Creek segment 6, it says more information on these issues will be provided by Colorado Springs Utilities and Lower Fountain. The power of this group is that everyone is cohesively agreeing on issues and concerns, but some of the entities are going into a little bit more depth regarding specific issues and concerns that are more relevant to the stream reaches where they discharge. So in addition to that, there are other general comments, and I won't go into each of those, but I will refer to a couple of them, such as comment 2 on page 2. It refers to the need to go ahead and look at ambient-based standards. And the Water Quality Control Commission has several different ways that they can go ahead and set standards. And what this is pretty much saying is that instead of just using table value standards that are standards that are accepted levels for various parameters that were developed on a statewide basis, we need to start looking at what are the specific standards that are appropriate for our stream segments. And this just requires kind of more investigation, more research, and more sampling. And that was one of the reasons why AFCURE was developed. And also to go ahead and not make sure that TMDLs are imposed on our region. TMDL refers to a specific calculation or a limit on a pollutant that concentration for a stream. And what happens is that when a TMDL is imposed, it tends to ratchet down the permit limits that the individual dischargers have. And as you heard Mike talk about, this will potentially cause enhancement and modifications to treatment plants where they might not be necessary. And oftentimes those costs have to be are transferred onto the citizens of the region. And also comment 3 on page 2 It appeared that division had recommended specific standards for some lakes and reservoirs where it appeared that they should not be applied, so we're asking the division for clarification on that. We did have some concerns regarding temperature standards, comment 4 on page 2, that more monitoring needs to be done. Because in order for dischargers to know if they need what's referred to as a temporary modification, that is, because there's uncertainty as to kind of what's the correct temperature standard will be, and if their facility will be able to comply with that, there needs to be additional data to go ahead and see if there will be a compliance problem. So that's kind of what the temperature issue is getting at, and the need to collect more data. Comment 6 on page 4 refers to the potential impacts from the Waldo Canyon fire on water quality. As you can kind of see, the common theme throughout these comments is to make sure to set appropriate standards for the streams and segments in the Fountain Creek watershed that represent some of the unique characteristics, the braided stream channels that we have here, the kind of low flow conditions that we have here. In some areas that we don't have sufficient shade, so the actual temperature in streams might be a little bit higher, to see if there's natural or irreversible conditions that really we cannot go ahead and treat for. So if you have those conditions present, we need to go ahead and make sure that the standards reflect that, so we don't have standards that are set that we are not able to meet and impose upon dischargers where we won't see a water quality improvement because we can't go ahead and meet the standards just because of the unique conditions of our streams. PPACG supported the AFCUR and the responsive pre-hearing statement and aligned with their positions. Attachment 2 is PPACG responsive pre-hearing statement, which is short because most of the details are contained in AFCUR's responsive pre-hearing statement. This is kind of a long, complicated process because in addition to kind of the responsive pre-hearing statements that were submitted a couple weeks ago, which 20 parties submitted, now there's another round, and that's called the rebuttal statements. So now what's happening is that AFCUR actually had a meeting on Monday to go through all the responsive pre-hearing statements that were submitted to see kind of what additional issues and concerns were brought up, to see if there were some parties that align with our positions that we might want to support in our rebuttal statements. And these are due on May 14th. In the meeting that we had on Monday, some of the issues that we found are that in the division's response pre-hearing statement, they said they were developing TMDLs, which refers to the total maximum daily load allocation, which kind of sets that concentration limit for a specific stream or segment. And they inadvertently mentioned Fountain Creek watershed in that responsive pre-hearing statement. And currently there are no selenium stream segments listed on the 303D list. So we're asking for clarification from that, and some of the stream segments that will be affected also in the Pueblo County area. And we're also aligning the Pioneer Natural Resources submitted comments similar to ours with regards to temperature. So we're supporting those comments just because they're aligned with us, and that there needs to be more data collected regarding temperature before standards can be put in place. And those are some of the comments and clarification on how data is being used. There were some instances in the responsive pre-hearing statements where it was suggesting that because studies have been done in other areas, they were applicable to the unique conditions in our area. This is an action item, and what I was looking for the board from is approval to go ahead and submit rebuttal statement from PPACG aligning with the same concerns and issues that AFCUR has, and also to go ahead and make these concerns and issues known at the June 10th Arkansas River Basin hearing in front of the commission. I'll open it up to questions.
Snyder?
I have a question about what is selenium, why do we test for it, and where does it come from?
Good question. The concern about selenium concentrations are that they're found naturally in shale formations such as Pierre Shale and in Upper Fountain Creek, specifically the lower parts of the lower portions of Upper Fountain Creek. There's some Pierre Shale formation, so there's the natural leaching of the selenium from those shale formations. We also looked at maps to see how the Waldo Canyon fire would affect the potential leaching of selenium from those formations, but we didn't find too many shale formations up there in the Waldo Canyon fire. And also in segment 2B, from the Highway 47 bridge down to the confluence of Fountain Creek and the Arkansas River, there's a lot of Pierre shale formations too. So as those shale formations become eroded and there's sometimes construction on them, there's high selenium concentrations found in the groundwater, also leaches into the surface water. We're concerned about it because it can affect the aquatic habitat in the streams and in the creeks and the macro invertebrate concentrations.
Thank you. Dr. Null?
I was just wondering if, in fact, a problem is observed as this is formed and operated, who bears the cost of the correction? Is it one point source, or is this an area responsibility if one of the members has violated the standard in some way?
It depends upon where that standard is set in place. For instance, in Upper Fountain Creek, if there was a standard for selenium put in place, because there's no point source discharges there would be a lot of BMPs, best management practices, put in place to go ahead and reduce those concentrations. But if you had a selenium concentration for segment 2A, you have Security Sanitation District, Wide Field Water, and Sanitation District, Fort Carson, and CSU. It kind of all discharge either directly or into tributaries into segment 2A. So those, when a TMDL would be developed, there would be permit standards put in place that are more stringent than the existing one. And for instance, in Monument Creek, you have Upper Monument Creek Wastewater Treatment Facility and also Tri-Lakes. Those standards would affect those discharges. So it all depends upon which stream segment that you're talking about.
Other questions? Yes, Mayor.
So I'm a little confused about how we're going to incorporate the possible effects of the Waldo Canyon fire into our setting of the standards.
That's a good question, and
question.
I've been doing research, and the whole problem is there's a lot of unknown, and that's why we're trying to do water quality monitoring, because we do have some baseline data to show if there's any elevated concentrations of certain pollutants. I mean, from the research I've done, it shows that you can have higher phosphorus concentrations. Temperature can naturally go up because you no longer have the shade of the streams. And creeks, you have more braided channels in certain parts, which could kind of cause the temperature standards to be higher. And also, I haven't seen the article, but I guess in the Water Research Federation, there's been studies that have shown algae blooms that have been caused by the fire, and that represents high nitrogen and high phosphorus concentrations up to 20 miles away. So I don't really have any clear-cut answer except to say we're trying to do research to show what the potential effects can be, and to try to get all all this information as part of the public record to show that, hey, you know, we brought this up to you as part of the hearing. You know, now 1 year, 2 years later, since this, you know, these standards occur every 5 years, we have the standard being imposed on you know, on us, and it might be because of the fire. So that's the approach.
Thank you.
Commissioner Steen?
I'm presuming that a new word here, anthropogenic, man-caused, are what we're looking for here. And the causes are naturally caused. There's be no implications for local governments to fix natural caused. Is that kind of the gist of it? And we should therefore wait to propose any new standards to determine the cause?
Right. And, you know, one example of that is there is a study done on Upper Fountain Creek many years ago, and it gained a lot of publicity, but it identified one of the major sources for the E. coli in Upper Fountain Creek as coming from pigeons. Now, if you had any other organization doing it besides the USGS, you know, it probably wouldn't be as reputable as it was. But I know, you know, Manitou Springs took some precautionary measures, because I know a lot of it some of it came from the pigeons that were roosting underneath the bridges. And I think you guys put some fencing or some, I don't want to say spikes, but ways so that the pigeons would go ahead and roost there. Spike's not the most appropriate word, but I couldn't.
So we're not trying to mitigate natural causes.
Yeah, exactly. If you can't control those, I mean, you know, what other options do you have? And it's, you know, oftentimes it's easy to go ahead and identify, you know, the point source dischargers as the cause, because, you know, they're discharging to a specific point, versus kind of non-point source issues where, you know, it's not a discrete point.
Shale or other
yeah,
causes.
Exactly. So.
Gotta go. Other questions? Yes, Mayor McCafferty.
Yeah, I remember when we first started this discussion, basically when the gentleman came from the EPA and we were talking about microinvertebrates that we have to take out of the water so people can drink it, and now they want in the discharge water those invertebrates back in. So it's kind of strange to me to think about it, but that's the game they want to play. So that's where we're at. I guess we'll have to play along.
Yes, Councilmember Knight.
I'd like to follow up on Dr. Knoll's question then. So these different segments that we have in AFCURE, there's not a single discharge station per segment. So how are you doing the identification of which of the discharge stations, I'm sorry, that you said in segment 2A, are you doing upstream and downstream testing of each discharge station?
Exactly. What's required for the nutrient monitoring requirements is that there's upstream of the discharge point and downstream of the discharge point, and then the effluent concentration at the discharge point to try to get an idea of kind of what to bracket kind of between where the effluent is being discharged. So that's one of the requirements for the nutrient monitoring. But there's additional monitoring that might need to be done depending upon the standards that the parameters that we're looking at.
Okay, so back to Dr. Knoll's question, then, if you find somebody that is the cause of a violation, is the financial fixing solely on that person, or is it shared in the segment?
It would be up if there was a specific point, yeah, that was discharging where the concentrations were too high. They would be put under a compliance procedure by the state to go ahead and make sure that they complied with those standards. So, I mean, if you have one discharger that's meeting the standards and you have one that's not, then yes, I mean the burden would be on that one.
Okay, And then, in the very beginning, you said, you scared me a little bit because you said you had pretty much every discharge station within AFCIR. Is there any discharge stations that are not?
No. Well, the military installations. That's kind of what I meant by that comment. Fort Carson, and they're kind of under different rules and regulations because they're part of the federal government. So there's, and I'm kind of looking into that a little bit more too. So that's what I meant by kind of not every.
Okay, so if Fort Carson turns out to be a violator, how do we how
there's-
do we indemnify us?
There are the state goes ahead and conducts audits and requires samples to be taken to find out, to determine if they're in violation of the standards.
Other questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Rich. Item C, Area Agency on Aging Funding Allocation for Services 2013 and 14. Guy Dutra-Savera.
Good morning. We received estimates of the amount of funds available to this Area Agency on Aging from the State Unit on Aging, and have been asked to proceed to do our budgeting based on those estimates. The reason that they're estimates this year is because of federal sequestration, and also because at the time that they were given, the Senate Bill 127, which increased funding for the area agencies on aging, had not yet been passed. Nonetheless, the Technical Review Committee of the RAC and the Regional Advisory Council both met and considered our options and came up with the scenario that you see in your second attachment, recommended 2013-14 funding. If you want to take a minute and look at the attachment before that, the funding summary, you can see where we lost money and where we gained money. So basically, we lost money in all the federal sources, and we gained money from the state. The discussion around how to spend what turned out to be increased funds for the Area Agency on Aging took place, and the results are in line with our four-year plan. So you'll see the largest increases percentage-wise are for the meal programs. In every county, they were given the highest priority, with transportation being behind that as the second priority, and then some filling in after that. Are there any questions for me?
I do note that you managed to keep Park County fairly healthy, and
Park County received increases, yes.
and that's probably why
Although Mark's not here right now.
Felt comfortable leaving early is the point I was making. And Colonel Moore, thank you for joining us.
I apologize for being late.
Mayor Snyder.
Yeah, on page 2 at the top on your background, you talk about our region's allocation based on that formula there. What is the source of those numbers? Is it the state demographer, or is it the census, or?
The numbers that are used to apply to that formula come from the state demography office, except for every 10 years they get revised by the census.
Okay, and I know we're going to hear from the demographers, so thank you.
Other questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 60, selection for PPACG board vacant officer positions. As was pointed out at our special meeting, we do have a vacancy caused by an election. That particular vacancy is vice chair. Rob had gave us options. Our bylaws leave us lots of room to handle that in most any way we would like to. We don't have to fill the position. we could fill the position today. We could move people around. We could make suggestions today and vote on it in June. So I guess I'm opening this for discussion. I would probably like to see the position filled. In fact, I know I would like to see the position filled. If I'm not here or later or something, it'd be nice to know there's an experienced person, ready to take the gavel.
I would agree with that. I'd like to see it filled, and of course, I think it's important that we fill it with someone that perhaps has served as one of the officers, experienced. I mean, that's what we look for is people that are knowledgeable of our operations and things we're doing, and can step in that position. So that's my thoughts on that, and sooner the better.
Other comments?
I think it should be filled also, however we go about doing that.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Glenn.
Speaking from the peanut gallery over here, I believe it should be filled. I believe that the second vice chair should bump up, but the city of Colorado Springs should have that next position so that you can grow that experience over the years when you look at the logical progression.
I agree with you, actually, completely, and I'm wondering if you would like to perhaps make a motion separating that into two motions, because we would need to move someone up, which would then create a vacancy in the second. Mayor McCafferty.
I'd like to hear from City of Colorado Springs as to their opinion, but I think Daryl's on to something.
Okay. Comments from the city side.
I think you got three smart people here, so if it's historically, the first vice chair has been a city position, I'd like to keep it that way, and I think, we can put a candidate that can step right in there and without any loss or there, and I mean, it is a deputy position, so it is a learning place anyway. So instead of playing the musical chairs, given our importance to the county and to the region, I'd like to see us just open it up for nominations and let us try and put a candidate in there.
Okay. Historically, the first vice chair is not a city reserved position, because first vice chair will typically then move to chair. So it's kind of a progression, and we do try pretty hard to have a county and a city representative on the office or board, but no specific positions for them. Councilmember Pico.
I think I'd prefer to see the rotation that you guys talked about here, where second vice chair move up to first vice chair to keep that experience on your board. And then I'd still like to see some, one of the other far more experienced people step into that. Say another county commissioner who used to be a council member.
Mayor Snyder.
Well, this is one of the few boards in the region where the small town officials are allowed to sit in officer positions. For instance, in the RTA.
Now there's only one.
You're going to hear the whining now.
And I'm not really comfortable talking since it involves me, but I have served on this board for, in one capacity or another, for my entire time as an elected official. I was backup for Marcy Morrison when she was mayor, and Mayor Drummond. Been the representative here now for the last 3 full years. Do have experience chairing meetings as a mayor, and would be glad to fill in as first vice chair. I believe we reappoint these yearly.
Right. This would just be until January when we do the normal election.
Right. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Steen.
Is it important, is it at this point able to make a motion to appoint? Are you open to an appointment?
Yes.
For a motion? Sure, I move to appoint Mayor Mark Snyder as our first vice chair.
Second.
Thank you. Discussions on the nomination. In fact, are there other nominations for first vice chair? Seeing none, I will close nominations. Any further discussion? Call the roll. All those in favor of appointing Mayor Mark Snyder as first vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We now have a vacancy in second vice chair that I would still like to see filled.
Rock, paper, scissors.
And now I have to tell you, I had the chance to talk to Don and Andy earlier, so they have had time to think about this some. So would the city members like to have the floor?
Yes.
Count.
I
Yes.
make a motion that since it's the second vice chair and not the first vice chair vacant, we table until June.
Do we have a second? Okay. That is a motion we can vote on. Any discussion?
To leave it, wait, let me clarify.
Right.
To leave it open?
Right, until the June meeting.
All right.
And this position is not in our bylaws reserved for city, but it just doesn't feel right to not have somebody from the city on the officer board. So, Mayor McCafferty.
Question for Rob. So would we need to do it traditionally by our bylaws, a nominating committee, or just wait till June and just accept nominations?
As the chair pointed out, your bylaws are very vague in this area. The nominating committee is traditionally part of your annual selection of the total slate of officers.
But not replacement?
Not replacement. Vacancies are however you deem fit.
Councilmember Pico.
I think we ought to just go ahead and fill the position today.
If the motion on the floor fails.
But that's my discussion point.
Okay. Other suggestions?
You could always withdraw the
Okay.
motion.
The motion that we're about to vote on is to table filling the second vice chair position until the June meeting. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Nay. You're not getting.
Let's do it. A hand count. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 2, 3. All those opposed, same sign. 1, 2, 3. Motion fails. We now have a second vice chair position to fill. Councilmember Pico.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Darrell Glenn.
I have to be willing to accept the nomination. I will decline the nomination because I would prefer that my city colleagues do that. It's in the city's best interest to assume that. But thank
I
you.
would like to, at first vice chair's suggestion, take a 5-minute break to allow the city folks to confer. So please reconvene in about 5 minutes.
Good idea. Yeah.
Strategize a little. Out come the knives.
Right.
Come on, Dennis.
Let it be noted that Mayor Travis Easton was one of the first.
Well, of course, Nikki never left her seat, so even better.
And also let the record reflect that the council members here from Colorado Springs are a very decisive group. In I believe less than 90 seconds they came up with their candidate. So, Councilmember Gabler.
Pico for second vice chair.
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations for second vice chair?
Would you like me to say it again?
Would you repeat that, please?
I would like to nominate Councilmember Andy Pico for second vice chair.
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Seeing none, I'll declare the nominations closed. Mr. Pico, I hope you forgive us for not allowing you to make a campaign speech, but yeah, right. Call the roll. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I was afraid you were about to decline. I thought you'd get this one. So Andy, any
I was tempted,
comments?
yeah.
Any comments?
No comments. I was kind of hoping to have a little bit more time, other than the vast experience of 2 weeks in office, to move into something like this, but ready to go.
Rob, have you provided the acronym list yet?
That would be helpful.
I don't think I have that list.
I guess this will be a little OJT then, as opposed to.
Well, how are you feeling, Dennis? You feel healthy? I'm feeling pretty good. So I just have some time.
Okay.
Mark's ready to make a power play.
I kind of wondered where he was going with that. Well, thank you all. I appreciate you stepping up because, as was stated, that your importance to the region is huge, and it's important to have you on the officer board. So we have that one settled. 7A, Aging Population Demographics presentation by Elizabeth Garner. Guy, do you want to introduce this?
Yes, I'm not Elizabeth. But Elizabeth was kind enough to come down to address you all at my request. As I'm sure you're all aware, the demographics of our population are changing and changing quickly. And as officials and elected officials of our governments, I thought having an overview of what that will look like will be useful to you. So I invited Elizabeth to present today. She's our state demographer, and she's been with the Department of Local Affairs since 2004. Her background is actually as an economist, and she has worked for 10 years with the CSU Cooperative Extension, managing a data center and producing economic and demographic reports. Elizabeth is a native of Denver, and so just up the road, and I'm sure I've heard her speak before, you will enjoy her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. So what I thought I'd do today is just give you a little bit of background about the aging in this region. So it's going to be, this is a kind of a short segment of the total demographic picture in the state, focusing primarily on age. First piece I think is always nice to start with is where are we to begin with. So Colorado's population in the year 2010 was about 5.03 million. That was an increase of 730,000 over the decade. Fastest growing region was the North Front Range at 27%. The state as a whole increased by 19%. Western Slope was the second fastest growing region, increasing by 22%. So that gives you a little bit of a gauge. However, El Paso County was the absolute fastest growing county in absolute terms, even though it was an increase of 21%, which was not at the high end. It did increase by over 107,000, which in absolute terms was the fastest growing county in the state. You can see the other numbers there for El Paso, Park, and Teller. An increase of 10% for Park, an increase of 11% for Teller. Again, below the state average, but still at an increase. And I guess I would want to recognize that during the last decade, some counties, you can see the lightest colored counties declined in population. So, you know, being kind of rural, beautiful counties, they did well to continue growing because some other places did not continue to grow. So, age, let's think about age. This shows an age change for El Paso County, and I've got one for Park and Teller, just between 2000 and 2010, again, to couch how fast you're growing as a region. Blue is 2000, red is 2010. What we can see for El Paso County is that you had growth in the 0 to 17, and actually growth in all age groups except for the 35 to 44-year-olds, which there's actually a nationwide baby bust in that age group. And so for the state as a whole, there was also a decline. But you can see that the fastest growing in absolute terms was at 45 to 64, and then you can also see that in the 65 plus. For Park County, a little bit different picture. You see declines in almost all age groups until you reach 45 to 64 and the 65 plus. Again, thinking about where are we changing in population. Teller County, similar to Park, where we see declines in most age groups until that 45 to 64, and a significant decline in that 35 to 44 in Teller, which might be something that requires additional discussion in the future in terms of how do you fill jobs, so that kind of jobs, housing, population mix.
Now, both of those counties grew.
Yes.
So it's not that they're losing all their kids and people are just getting older. Do we have retirees moving there? Is that kind of what you're...
That'll be the next slide.
Okay.
So you're perfectly aligned with this discussion. But it's always a good question to know, why is a age group declining? Is it because people are moving out, or is it because people are aging out of that age group? So what's important to remember with that 35 to 44-year-old age group is that they were, in 2010, they were the baby boomers. Or, I'm sorry, in 2000, they were the baby boomers. So when they aged out of that 35 to 44 and into the 45 to 64, you had that baby boom age group moving out. So that's what really shifts. But it's important to see that there is an absolute decline in the 35 to 44, an absolute decline in children.
And I would just tell you that for example, in the Woodland Park School District, that's reflected in our declining enrollments in our schools up there.
Yeah, so that's always a good sign.
45 to 44 age shift reflects that change.
Well, and see, and it all goes together. Those 35 to 44-year-olds are the ones that have the 0 to 17-year-olds. And so if you see a decline in one, you typically just see a decline in the other. And with the El Paso, that decline in that 35 to 44 is very small, but you see that increase in the 25 to 34, which also, when we're looking at that 0 to 17, we're looking at all 0 to 17, which includes the 0 to 5, which is really where El Paso had the growth.
Is this similar to what's going on nationwide, or is this more specific just to Colorado?
Every state is very different, and every county within the state is very different. There are some counties within the state that are growing very fast on the kid side, and actually growing fast on the 35 to 44-year-old side. I would say that this is fairly natural for this area, especially looking at both Teller and Park. When we look at their age distributions, you can see that there is a trough in that kind of what you would consider middle-aged. A lot of people move there as baby boomers, and now they're aging into other age groups. They haven't had the infill of the younger age group as much as other places, and so you do see that trough, and that's where that question is into the future when we're looking at the working age population, is are there places for working age population to live and work in Teller, live and work in Park, kind of idea. So this is the entire age distribution for the region. The red line being 2000, the blue line being 2010. You can see that trough in that 34 to 45-year-old age group where the blue line dips. So you can see that trough occurring. You can then also see the baby boom population, which is in that 45 to 64-year-old. You can also see the lack of 65 plus relative to all other age groups. But you can also see what happened between 2000 and 2010, how that line moved forward just by aging. So in terms of the region, in terms of their size of the 65 plus and percent of total and all of that, El Paso County in the total amount of 65 plus folks is third largest. We can imagine that Park and Teller are going to have a lower total number compared to other counties just because they're smaller. In their terms of change and absolute change, El Paso County was number one in that change of that 65 plus. And we'll talk a little bit about why in a minute. Park County, 24th, Teller, 16th. Then let's talk about percent change, which then is also important to look at because it's relative to where they started. El Paso falls down in terms of their only 38% increase compared to Teller at 96 and Park at 79. So even though Teller has a very small share of the total population, 65 plus in the state, their percent increase, they almost doubled in their size of that 65-plus population. And then again, you can see percent of their total population. Again, El Paso is relatively young because of the young migrants that they attract to the area, at being only 10% of the total population is 65 plus. Park is 11th and Teller is 12th, so relatively similar between those two counties. This shows then how do those counties fit into the entire state in terms of percent of the population over the age, or percent change in the population 65 plus over the decade. Blue counties are those that actually had an absolute decline in their population over the age 65. Lightest color are the lowest change. The darkest color, red, is the fastest change. So we had, you can see Eagle, Summit, Douglas, actually all had increases of over 100% in their population over the age 65. But you can see also Park and Tellers in that darker red, indicating a significant change. Colorado itself increased by 133,000, about 32%. So why are we getting old fast? I still only get one cake. I get one cake, I get one present, and that's it. But we are aging very fast as a state, and it's primarily because we've never had a lot of people over the age 65. When I show you the migration by age, you'll understand why. We just don't migrate people here 65 plus. We migrate people here primarily between the ages of 25 and 34. You saw that our population over 65 increased by 133,000 people over the last decade. Only 6,000 of that is from migration from other states. The rest of it is from birthdays. So what we're really seeing is a homegrown population increase of that over 65. We've got the fourth lowest share in all states, the population over 65. We've got a lot of boomers, but again, we don't even have a large concentration of boomers compared to other states. We're right in the middle of most states. We've got we're about ranked 23rd for all states in our share of baby boomers. So it's not like we've got a ton of them. It's just we don't have a lot of people over the age 65. We've got about 1.3 million of them in the state. Our population 65 plus is expected to increase by 125% over the next 20 years, increasing from 555,000 from 1.23 million, just from aging. Again, we don't migrate in net numbers in large amounts for the state as a whole, so it's really a lot of birthdays. And this just gives you an age distribution. So this age is along the bottom, and these are absolute by single year of age. This is the chart. So what we can see is that the red line is where we've got the 65 line, and then you can see the baby boom population in the year 1980 in Colorado. Total state population was 2.8 million. 1990, you saw them age along. 2010. 2030. So comparing 1990, 2010, and 2030, what we can see is first that baby boom age population aging through. By 2010, all of the baby boomers will have turned age 65. And what you can see is in 2010, we were meeting up against that, what a lot of people call wave or wall, significant increase in that 65 plus population just meeting up to the age 65. Then what you'll also see behind it at the younger ages is significant population increase. And a lot of that, again, has to do with the baby boomers aging out of the labor force. As they age out, people are going to be required to take their position, but then they also create new demands on the system. So if we look at your region, population 65 plus is forecast to increase from a little over 60,000 in 2010 to a little over 100,000 by 2020, just within the next 7 years. This is the fastest decade growth that you will see in your region, increasing by 62%, followed by another decade increasing by 42%, increasing to almost 160,000. And then slowing down to increasing about at the same rate that the region will be growing at about 9% between 2020 or between 2030 and 2040, but increasing to a little over 160,000 by 2040. So, as I mentioned, every state is different, every county is different. The state as a whole has a net increase or net migration of 65 plus really close to zero. Like I said, over the decade, increase of about 6,000 people when the entire population increased by 730,000. However, by county, everybody's a little bit different. Darkest colored blues are counties that had net increases in that 65 plus population. Reds had net outflow of that 65 plus population. We can see there that El Paso was one of the largest net in-migration of 65 plus to the county. So that's an important factor to notice. And then we've got Teller is positive and Park is positive as well. So this is the age distribution of your net migrants to this region. And I'm sorry for so many charts. I just love pictures, and not everybody's into them. But I hope it helps tell the story. What's important or significant to notice, that line again is at the age 65. This is your entire region. This was the net migration between 2000 and 2010. And what we can see is that 65 plus, you've got positive numbers. So this region attracts people to its area. If we look at the percent of the migrants for each of your counties, El Paso, of your migrants, 65 of your total migrants, those that were 65 plus was 8%. Parks was 10%. Tellers was 17%. So are you different between your counties? Absolutely. Teller is attracting significantly larger number of migrants that are 65 plus. Even though it's a very small county, small numbers of 65 plus, that increase for Teller is a lot from migration compared to the other two counties. So why do we even talk about it? One, absolute sheer numbers. Percent change can say one thing, but sheer numbers is another. Increasing from 555,000, 1.2 million is huge, and it's going to be huge for this region. It's going to be a huge economic driver, and that's an important thing to be taken into account. Spending from the 65 plus supports about a quarter of a job per person over the age 65. So it's important to really look at how do we attract and retain this age group, because they don't necessarily boom and bust like tourism does, or like sometimes military can, or sometimes other industries can boom and bust. It's a nice steady flow. It doesn't have the huge economic driver impact that a lot of those other industries do, but it's a nice one to have in your region. The service job or health service jobs is expected to be supported by about 1 in 10 by every person over the age 65. So it's a huge market to be looking at. Other things to be thinking about is housing. Over the last several decades, these bars show growth in households by age group over each decade. And what we can see is that darker blue is that 45 to 64-year-old. And that was growing incredibly fast from 1990 to 2000, 2000 to 2010. But what do we see from 2010 to 2020 and 2020 to 2030? Our largest growing household type is that 65 plus population. Do their housing units requirements often change with age? Absolutely. And so that's something to be thinking about as a region. Big question with the retirees, will they stay or will they go? And I'm not going to say that at 65 everybody's retiring. In no way is that the case. I use that as a nice number because we've got good data for it. But we know that people will stay in the labor force until they're 75, and we know that people exit at 55. So it's a nice round number. Fastest growth of household types is actually that 65 plus living alone. So in terms of really thinking about the Area Agency on Aging is providing services to those 65 that live alone that might need additional services. 38% live alone. Households at largest risk tend to be the single older woman because they have the lowest household income. So looking at, do you have housing options for all age groups as well in your region? Types of housing, again, change by age. Most of the baby boomers have been incredibly active over their lifespan. So they might have been big hikers, big bikers, big skiers. They might have gone through one knee, maybe a second, maybe working on a hip. Do they want the multi-level, or are they looking for the nice ranch-style home? Health services, transportation services, huge. And looking at location of these things, definitely location is always the key thing. You know, are they close enough to transportation services and health services and other amenities that they want to see? In terms of the other stats with the 65 plus, 92% of them lived in the same house a year ago, so they're not necessarily huge movers. But there is movement within that age group. 80% are owner occupied. Of those owner occupied, 26% are considered cost burdened. So again, looking at price and affordability. 54% of renters are cost burdened. So that other 20% that are not owner occupied are renter occupied and considered rent burden. Disabilities increase with age, and so I won't go into more about that, but the likelihood of disability increases significantly with age. So not only looking for care for the disabilities, but also transportation services. Looking at your labor force is going to be huge. You saw that big bubble of those baby boomers, and especially in this region, they are your workforce currently. And 37% of the labor force, 65 stay in the workforce longer because they want to and need to. But over the next 20 years, we're expecting about 1 million people to age out of the labor force. Do you have that labor force to fill the jobs? I know a lot of people are looking at, gosh, our unemployment rate is so high right now. We need jobs, we need jobs, we need jobs. Be careful, because just shortly we could be experiencing, now I wouldn't say shortages because there is a mobile labor force, but we could experience a more tight labor force to where there aren't enough people to fill the jobs that we're looking for. Looking at increasing, like again, if I age out of the labor force, I'm going to need somebody to take my place, plus I'm going to create additional demands on services. Oldest aged industries in the state: education, health, utilities, mining, government, all significant employers in your region. Currently, there's not enough gerontologists. What are we doing to attract more gerontologists? Not enough long-term care workers as well. Last piece that I'll bring up is just also the impact that we can be experiencing on public finance. What this looks at is the share of the entire population by age group. The purple bar at the bottom, or the purple line at the bottom, is that 65 plus population. The green is the 45 to 64. What do we see happen between 1990 and 2010? An increase in that share of that 45 to 64-year-old. Tell me something about that 45 to 64-year-old. Highest earning age group, highest spending age group, highest property tax paying age group. And that had been increasing, accelerating over the last 2 decades. And what do we see over the following decades? A decline in the total share. So concepts of being able to grow ourselves out of situations, maybe not as likely as we had seen, let's say, in the year 2000. And during that subsequent decline in the green of that 45 to 64, we have an increase in the 65 plus, which tend to have the lowest household income, lowest spending for goods, and lowest property tax paying. So again, what we're seeing is that our age distribution is actually becoming more normal. Will we become the youngest state? Will this region become, the oldest state? Will this region become the oldest? By no means, no way. We will be maybe changing from 4th youngest to maybe 6th youngest. Because guess what? Every other state has a group of baby boomers. So everybody else is going through this, and as we're going to be competing for labor force, so is every other state. Is every other state as beautiful as here? No. We have one thing in our favor. We might be able to attract people to Colorado as our labor force because we're beautiful. But remember, every other state is going to be competing for that labor force as well. For public finance, we'll definitely be experiencing changes in revenue and expenditures, downward pressure from income tax, sales tax, property tax, while at the same time experiencing increased demand for health services, Medicaid. So just to tie things up, definitely aging is a fundamental change to our state. I call this our transition decades. Over the next 2 decades, we're definitely transitioning as a state in terms of maturing both as an economy as well as a population. We've had an abnormal age distribution, and we're just getting a little bit more normal. And we will continue to be younger than average. We'll see experience changes in the labor force, in household formation, in demand for housing types, transportation services, economic services and economic drivers, healthcare and health services, and there's probably a whole gamut of other things that the Area Agency on Aging is looking at as well. These are just some of the highlights to give you a taste of some of the things that we'll be looking at. Oh, and public finance and public policy impacts. So there you go. Any questions?
Mayor Turley.
It's really, really interesting information. It just kind of ties a bunch of things together that I know we see going on. Could we get a copy of this emailed
Absolutely.
to us or a link or something? That'd be great. That'd be very useful.
Perfect.
Because I need to share that with some people.
And and just let me finish up. Anything, all right, so I'm with the Department of Local Affairs. Our goal is to provide services to local governments. So if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. We work a lot with PPACG, so just please call me.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Knight.
You said our largest migration is in the mid-30 range. I found that strange because we get a lot of military people that come here and then retire out of the military and stay. Where does that rank as far as our immigration stats?
So we don't have really good information on migration by military status. But you saw that we've got a positive for Colorado Springs, or for El Paso County, a positive in migration for that 65 plus. But again, you have to remember active military being recruited into this area, even though they might not even be physically here. If they're stationed here, they'll be included here. But for Colorado as a whole, by far we attract that 25 to 34-year-old in almost every county, well, except for the Eastern Plains. But we really, it's crazy. We're number one. So Denver metro area was the number one MSA in the nation for attracting 25 to 34-year-olds. Isn't that weird? But we are in the Rocky Mountain West, and we're a huge attractor for people looking for jobs first time.
But this age group for military person coming here on their last military assignment, retiring, and staying here is probably closer to the 45 to 55 range.
Yeah, so, I mean, when we look, if I can get back to, we can see. So what you can see it's very positive at all age groups. If this were the chart for Colorado as a whole, almost at the age 40, it goes flat. So for your region, definitely you attract more at the older age groups than the state as a whole does. And, and actually I can provide Craig, I can provide Rob, anybody with the absolute. Actually, we have it on our website. We've got it out. You can get this for every single county, and it's on our website to see which are your primary age groups and compare that to every other county.
Dr. Knoll?
I assume that we have repeaters. That is, people who are here, like military, who come back here when they retire. In 1970, this community was upset because their kids had to go away to school. There weren't enough educational institutions and so forth. But we've always had, that's changed, and we've always had, then in the growth, opportunities now for students at my university to be employed here where they weren't before. And so it seems to me that these drivers are in part the 65-year-olds that do come here. Do we know if they were here before?
No, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of good information, but we do know anecdotally.
A lot of military say they're going to come back here and retire. In fact, I got interested in coming here to teach because of a military person said, I'm going back. He says, I'm getting back to Colorado as fast as I can when I retire.
Yeah, no, we know anecdotally that that's the case, that a lot of people, especially in this region, have been here before and come back to retire. And actually in other parts of the state as well. Another big driver is parents of baby boomers coming here. So it's like, let's say you're 45 and your parents are getting older and they want to retire somewhere. They retire where the family is, and so a lot of that connection occurs as well.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Yes, Mayor Snyder.
I really appreciate your enthusiasm and this presentation. I've sat through other demographic presentations that were often as dry as burnt toast, but I You brought a lot of energy to it, so I really appreciate that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. 7B, CDOT ramp applications update / Tiger 5. Craig.
Just briefly, I believe you received an email yesterday that has the summary information of the ramp applications that were submitted. 247 applications around the state, 6 of them from us. So we will be, I believe, tomorrow afternoon or Friday morning, they will be posting what those applications were, and we'll have a better idea of what the competition form is. One of the things that CDOT did request is, in addition to the resolution that we submitted with our applications, they asked that a letter from the chair of PPACG board speak specifically to the ramp applications. I believe you have a copy of that letter on your desk. If there are any changes to that, that needs to be submitted to CDOT today by noon, so we've got 66 minutes to do that letter.
No pressure.
If you approve it, yes.
Yeah, and a quick comment on that.
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, we just received word from CDOT on the letter. Staff's position is, in your minutes from the April 29th meeting, you approved the list, 1 through 6. We're just documenting it in letter form to make sure it meets with other requirements. Not a resolution this time.
So this is not listed as an action item, but if I receive a general consensus, I'll sign this.
Yeah, go for it.
So Andy was making his vote known as opposed to a secret ballot, is that what? Okay, thank you.
As far as the Tiger 5, there is about $420 million nationwide for another round of Tiger grants. We have submitted a Tiger application, all 4 previous. PPACG staff, we've talked with CDOT. We believe resubmitting our Tiger 4 application, which was the Fillmore interchange, is what is most, most efficient and most likely to be selected. We emphasis on the Veterans Administration clinic that will be going in. But if there's any discussion on other Tiger.
Councilmember Pico.
What's a Tiger?
It is.
Other than something I shoot at.
Yeah. I can't off the top of my head tell you what it stands for. What it is, it's a pool of money that US DOT has available for infrastructure improvements. It has traditionally been used for multimodal streetcars, multimodal station type projects. There's usually a few, 100 million or so, or 150 million that go to pure transportation improvements, road improvements. Sometimes I don't think of transit as transportation. Anyway.
Careful, Dr. Knoll is watching you closely.
It is, there's been very little feedback as to why projects are not selected. The actual criteria that is used to select those is not as transparent as we would desire, but they are announced with vigor from the the Secretary of Transportation as to here's the projects that are selected. Colorado is lagging pretty far behind what would be our fair share of projects. The ones that one that I can think about that we got was US 36, turning it into a BRT route. Phase 1 project was a Tiger 1 or 2 grant. But I don't, off the top of my head, I can't tell you what Tiger stands for.
As a recent student of the topic, I think it's transportation infrastructure generating economic recovery.
Yes.
Actually, there were some of those on East Highway 24 where there was some Tiger funding went into some projects out there too.
Was there a second chair?
You beginning to have doubts there, are you?
Yeah. Yeah, we will be getting a list of our acronyms. In Transportation Department, I will, other than the military, I think have the acronyms to be acronyms. So,
when does the Tiger grant have to be submitted?
June 3rd, Monday, June 3rd. I think the commission is looking for something like end of next week. I don't know if Doug or Tom can tell me when we're looking at our Tiger. Yeah, it's like end of next week. That's why the resubmission of Tiger 4.
So we will not have another meeting before Tiger grants go in.
Nope, they got announced 2 weeks ago with a 1 month. And traditionally, there is about 10 times the dollars available are asked for. So when there's $400 million available, $4 billion in requests, that's pretty close to what happens. I think Tiger 1, it was 20 times what was available. So,
Mr. Godfrey?
How will Tiger
If you could come to the mic, we're,
Sorry, Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. What's the impact of submitting that as a Tiger grant to the current efforts to fund the Fillmore interchange?
My take would be, because when the Tiger will be announced after the ramp is announced, so CDOT will fully fund Fillmore, and then they'll get the Tiger grant, and then we'll
you're
just...
confident of that?
I am confident of that.
Okay.
And then CDOT will be able to fund another project around the state with the ramp funds that had been designated for our Fillmore interchange.
Okay.
So.
Now, just by way of history, we've had some pretty robust discussions in the past about what project we're going to submit for the earlier Tigers, and Fillmore kind of came to the top partly because of the criteria that Tiger had put forward, and as well as the dollar amount available. They were not going to approve something big enough to handle our number one, Cimarron, so that's kind of how Fillmore kept bubbling to the top of the Tiger grant application process. We do need to give direction, and even though this is not listed as an action item, I'm sure we can, our bylaws allow us to deal with this as an emergency item of some sort and ratify next month if need be. So any discussions on the Tiger grant? Yes, Rob.
Suggestion, and probably since the board approved the application under Tiger 4 round, you could just let that priority stand as Tiger 5 round.
Okay.
As a suggestion.
Does that meet approval?
That's a good idea.
Okay.
We're going Roman now, I guess. Huh? All right.
Can we use Tiger for a ramp deposit, 20% matching?
Yeah, really.
Would be nice. I don't think they'll buy that one fast.
Okay. Wrong color of money again. Item C, Statewide Transportation Advisory Committee Agenda Discussion, otherwise known as STAC, and you have that agenda on your table in front of you. Craig, you're teeing this one off again?
Yep. I spoke with Wayne, Clerk and Recorder Williams. He will be at the STAC. You see most of the items are informational. In fact, there is nothing for the STAC to act on other than the minutes. That we will be getting background on information on a wide variety of things. The ramp update, at that point, I believe we will have what the projects were and the dollar values submitted. The enhanced NHS, that has been a topic of discussion. There will be an information update on what CDOT's recommendations are going to be regarding the NHS system. The National Highway System. And what happened is there, prior to MAP 21, which MAP 21 is the newest federal legislation, there was a set of what it was called the National Highway System. MAP 21 required that all principal arterials that are under jurisdiction of local governments also be added onto the National Highway System. What happened is some places then downgraded their roads to below principal arterial status. Others, like Colorado Springs, maintained their system. We'll get an update as to what CDOT believes should be the National Highway System. The last item is the interregional connectivity study. That is commuter rail along the Front Range I-25. I got some information on that. Actually, May 29th in this room from 5 till 7 is the meeting on that. What it showed is about 40% of the ridership is Colorado Springs to Denver. So that segment is the most highest benefit cost ratio in the system. It also includes the DIA to the Eagle Airport section. That has, I think, the lowest section, but the highest cost. It's, I think, 20% of the ridership and 60% of the project cost. So, but there'll be more information forthcoming on that item here at May 29th.
And we'll email that announcement out for that date.
Okay, great. Rob?
One more thing to add. Somewhere in the STAC agenda discussion, remind the board the funding memorandum of understanding you have with CDOT. expires at the end of June. Our friends at the Denver Regional Council of Governments and our staff would suggest, we're asking the board if you would like us to continue that discussion and not let that MOU just expire and have a discussion with CDOT, probably starting with the Friday State Transportation Advisory Committee meeting and working through that system. It's not an action for you, but just...
It is something that we need to be aware of. Talked about it briefly yesterday at the agenda prep, and I don't know if CDOT is going to be willing to enter into MOUs with anyone anymore. There are only 2 MOUs out there. I understand both of them expire at the same time. But my thinking is if there's an MOU for one person, there better be one for us, even if we're the only one. But if commitments are being made, I want a commitment made to us. So. Rob?
And this, the detail, right now the MOU as a planning guide, and of course Craig, and we look at how are we doing against that MOU. Right now it says over 6 years, every color of money, we should get about 9.5% of state and federal transportation dollars that come to the state. That's based on a variety of factors. We have agreement with CDOT staff of how to calculate that, so we know that. That was direction by this board probably a year ago. So we did that probably 6 months ago, presented to the board. So we know how to do it. We're in agreement with that. It's just now the document, should we extend it? Should we modify it? And we need CDOT's commentary on that before we can bring something to you.
Councilmember Knight?
Yeah, Rob, okay, the agreement says 9.68 or 86, but...
9.48.
9.48. Reality, I think you told me we're only getting like 7.5 or something like that?
Over a certain 6-year time period. That varies depending on large projects. This coming year, we're doing well if we have widening of I-25 and knock on wood, maybe Cimarron for $95 million. Our percentage will be quite high. But as I said, over 6 years, some of those earlier years were real low numbers, like in the 4 to 5%. So it takes our 6-year average down. And so the last 6-year average we looked at, we were short about $188 million, so about 7.2%. In the agreed upon calculation. So we were short, but the next version of that we may be okay. But again, we need to see where CDOT is on extending that agreement, how to use that agreement, and any other topic within that agreement that our board would like to have a discussion with CDOT on.
So, okay, well, let me rephrase my question. Well, the bottom line then is, have we seen the memorandum provide any value added to our negotiating positions?
Staff position is yes. It gives us a chance to inform the board of how we're doing in that funding pool statewide. And how hard if we see new money coming, how hard we emphasize that we pay into the system through gas tax. The residents of this region ought to get back a share of that, whether it's 100% or 90% or something less of what they put in. That's the debate.
Okay. That discussion will be ongoing. And, of course, we'll include CDOT.
Thank you very much.
Item number 8, legislative tracker. They have less than 13 hours to
Get some things
keep us
done.
on pins and needles.
Hi, I'm Dallas Jamison. I'm the Senior Policy and Communications Advisor, and welcome to the new board members. Before we get to the tracker, I just want to mention briefly, Jacqueline is going to be handing the tracker out, but also giving the new board members our 2012 annual report video. It's just a good overview for the new board members, what we did last year, what the achievements were, and gives you a little bit of information about our programs. So please enjoy it and circulate. Got to do my PR thing for PPACG. Circulate it to your contacts if you would. There's also a link on YouTube and on the homepage of our website. One of the responsibilities of policy and communications is to monitor legislation at the state and federal level, legislation that might have impacts on our programs. So that is what you see in front of you, and these pieces of legislation have been identified by our program managers as areas of specific interest. Three in particular that we're following right now, SB 127, which I think Guy mentioned. This is additional funding for the Older Coloradans Cash Fund. At this point, it's been passed by the House and Senate. It's awaiting the governor's autograph. And Guy will come up and give you a little bit more detail about why that's important to our region. Rich is going to talk about HB 1044, which is gray water standards. And then the final thing is just a mention by Craig on the SB 48, which is a piece of legislation that gives greater flexibility to local and state governments to fund transit initiatives with transportation money. So who wants to be first? Craig, do you want to come up and chat about? Thanks.
Senate Bill 48 what is quite simply allows more flexibility to local governments. The interpretation had been that the Highway Users Tax Fund could not be used for operations. It could only be used for on-road type improvements, except for the State Patrol, which got it off the top. And what this did is just basically provide more flexibility. There's no requirement that any HUTF be used for transit, but it provides flexibility to local governments as they're playing with their budgets. Take money out here, put it there. It allows a little more flexibility on what to spend money on. Operations of transit is the big need. It's easier to get, you can get federal funds to buy the buses, but actually to operate it is harder. This lets those funds go to do that operation. So, and you all had recommend supporting of it, and it did pass. So, thank you.
Rich?
House Bill 1044, the gray water use does appear to be at the governor's desk. PPACG did not take a position on this. CML did vote to moderate, and CCI support it. I just wanted to go ahead and clarify this bill does not require the municipalities or counties to implement a gray water program unless they choose to do so. There has been some kind of miscommunication about that. And the bill directs the Water Quality Control Commission to establish requirements, prohibitions, and standards with regards to gray water use. At the Water Quality Management Committee last week, someone did pass out some information, some key points regarding the gray water use in Colorado, and some information, some facts about the bill. I only have 4 copies. So we can go ahead and send it out electronically if people are interested. I'll go ahead and pass out the 4 copies I do have. House Bill 1191 that will be going to the governor's desk, and that does establish a $15 million grant program to help wastewater treatment plants with regards to the nutrients requirements, and we talked a little bit about that this morning. And those were the only 2 updates I want to go ahead and present.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other reports? Oh, Guy, I thought we lost you.
You can vote. I just wanted to mention Senate Bill 127. It's actually scheduled to be signed by the governor at 10:30 in the morning tomorrow at the Senior Resource Center in Wheatridge, not far from where I grew up. So basically, the older Americans, the older Coloradans fund is being increased by $4 million this year. That's very good. Without that, we would have had funding decreases, as you saw in our previous agenda item. In 2004, a study was done to determine what the need in the state was to fund senior services. In 2004, that need was identified at $96 million. Right now, the total from the state of Colorado is, with the increase of $4 million, is 13. So, if you, as you think about these things, keep that in mind.
Thank you. Any other legislative updates? Item number 9 is member entity announcements. Anything going on in your community that you would like to share for the good of the whole? Mayor McCafferty.
Yeah, I just thinking on a legislative note, there's a bill on the governor's desk right now, Senate Bill 252, which causes rate increases for rural electricity communities throughout the state. I signed a document not supporting that. I would encourage others to do so. It's in the tough economic times right now that we have on the Eastern Plains, it'd be very tough to add that additional cost to those people out there and to the smaller towns up in the mountains and anywhere in rural Colorado. So
Any of the farmers that are irrigating, it'll be a significant cost to them to run their pumps.
And if you add the increase to your farmers, it's going to eventually add increase to your food.
Other comments, announcements? Commissioner Steen.
Just real brief, many of you may know Sheriff Frank Fenn, who was a sheriff in Teller County during the Hayman fire, passed away, and there'll be a memorial service for Frank on Monday, the 20th of May in Cascade.
Thank you. Anything else? You all have the meeting schedule? We are adjourned.
Now I get to go see a doctor.
Good luck. Tough.